Life exists on Earth because of bacteria. We exist because of bacteria. Microbes like bacteria and archaeobacteria were the first life forms on Earth. Cyanobacteria created our oxygen-filled atmosphere. Plants are able to grow because of the nitrogen that is fixed into the soil by bacteria. And dead organisms return to the soil because of decomposing microorganisms. Life on Earth began with bacteria, and all of life today is dependent upon it. Bacteria are everywhere, in everything and part of everything. It can be said that humans are superorganisms. We are born into a symbiotic relationship with 10 trillion bacteria and other microorganisms living in dynamic ecosystems all over and inside our body. Bacteria are a part of us, but they are also part of the societies we have built. It has been suggested that civilizations were begun to share the work of bread making. Even bread would never have been possible without bacteria.
The human body is, we could look at it as a superorganism.
Trillions of microscopic organisms, or microbes, call the human body home. Organisms such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, and even microscopic animals live all over our body, on our skin, and even inside us.
We are outnumbered by microbes by a factor of 10. So for every human cell, there's 10 bacterial cells that reside inside and on the outside of the body. So in a way, you could think that the role of the human is to carry around the microbes. Of course, this is it's an interesting thought.
These tiny organisms make up our microbiota, and most of them, about 95%, live in our gastrointestinal tract, more commonly known as our gut.
Well, the bacteria in your gut help digest food that the human system is not able to digest, such as plant polysaccharides, as well as training your immune system and fighting off pathogens. So this microbiome that's on us is absolutely critical to health.
The whole process, I mean, it seems so simple. It's like, oh, we just have these 5 ingredients. To get that flour to that spot has had so many hands in it, like the original person that sows the seed, the person that does the weed management on it, then the person who harvests it. And then you've got to carry the wheat to the grain elevator. And then it goes to a miller where it gets split up into parts. And so, it just is like a huge ordeal. Teleco Grains is what we like to refer to as a village bakery. We are just a small scale in-house operation. We only use natural ingredients, no preservatives, and old world techniques.
Mass-produced bread today probably is not as good a source of probiotics or prebiotics as it was a long time ago. If you have somebody locally who's making bread in the traditional way, where they're allowing the bread to rise the appropriate amount of time to develop those probiotics and using good sources of whole grains, then yes, I think that would be a good source.
Back in the old days, you would take your wheat and you would grind it and you would use all that, the fiber, the germ, and make the bread. So now when flour is processed, it's separated into components of like where you got your bran here and your germ here, and then it's reconstituted when they put it in the bag. So you're not getting complete grain.
Since most microbes are in our colon, or large intestine, what we eat feeds our microbiota. And what a healthy microbiota needs are fiber-rich complex carbohydrates.
Wild rice or quinoa or whole oatmeal, those can be good sources of prebiotics as well.
Simple sugars found in refined carbohydrates tend to be absorbed quickly and don't reach the colon for the microorganisms to feast on. But complex carbohydrates can't be digested in the small intestine and make their way to the colon, where bacteria break them down through fermentation.
Historically, people have thought that the bacteria basically lie in the colonic cells in your intestine, and they basically are in there as the food washes by. And in many cases, the plant polysaccharides that you and I can't digest, they can feed on, and they in turn then pass metabolites to the human system. So there's a real incredible kind of symbiotic relationship between the microbiota and the human system.
Bread has been such a scapegoat for everything, and the people who eat the long fermented breads or the old-fashioned breads like they did like they made in Europe that were heavily sourdough, heavy hydration. How come people don't have problems with those types of bread?
So the thing about a traditional bread, especially a sourdough bread, is you have both probiotics from the beneficial bacteria used to make the dough rise, and you have the prebiotics in there, the whole sources of whole grains that help those probiotics survive, both in the bread and in your body.
The environment contains wild yeast, and that's how you start a sourdough, is just kind of, you mix your flour and your water, and then you're just kind of giving this open invitation for these yeast to come in.
Through contact with the environment, we essentially select for the microbes that colonize the human body.
From the day we are born, our microbiome evolves quickly and reaches maturity during the first 2 to 5 years.
So the immune system is sort of trained, if you will, by exposure to these microbes. So then the immune system knows how to recognize the good microbes and the bad microbes, and the ones that are adapted to live with humans will colonize it.
As adults, changes to our microbiota are likely to be small, but major shifts in composition can occur when we radically change our diet or take antibiotics, which kill bacteria.
Specifically, the use of RoundUp we've been told that it's safe for humans because it doesn't affect our metabolic pathways. However, the same metabolic pathways that RoundUp uses to disrupt the growth of weeds is the same metabolic pathway that's found in our gut bacteria.
You get a bacterial infection, you go get antibiotic, you get diarrhea, you eat probiotics, diarrhea goes away. So the aspect of the microbiome being balanced in your system is pretty obvious to most people.
Overuse of antibiotics can cause disequilibrium in the microbiota, and then a lot of the times the microbiota will have a hard time getting back to its normal state.
But it's only relatively recently that we've begun to study the relationship between our microbiome and our health. And while the research is still in its infancy, the microbiome has been linked to everything from obesity, asthma and allergies, to autoimmune disorders such as rheumatoid arthritis and diabetes.
Periodontal disease is considered a polymicrobial disease, so there's not like a single microbial species that is causing the disease. What happens is there's a disequilibrium in the composition of the oral microbiota, a dysbiosis, and some of the microbes that trigger inflammation response from the host become elevated in numbers. So there are some bacteria which are called health-associated, and others are called disease-associated. And you get a progression from a healthy status through gingivitis and later into periodontitis.
The microbiome also influences how our brain functions and is linked to conditions such as depression, anxiety, and stress. These links explain why there is now an emphasis on creating or maintaining a healthy gut.
Some good ways to make sure to keep your gut microbiome healthy is to make sure you're consuming a variety of fruits and vegetables. Also, you want to limit the amount of refined flour, like anything white bread, white pasta, white rice, and really limit the amount of sugar you take as well. Also, only take antibiotics if you really need it. If you have a cold and your doctor wants to prescribe it to you, maybe question that, see if you really need to take that antibiotic.
We are superorganisms living in symbiosis with trillions of microscopic organisms. Our diet, rich in fiber, provides the nutrition needed for our gut microbes to supply us with the nutrients that we cannot obtain ourselves. Exposing ourselves to bacteria in our environment, from the birth canal to our gardens and pets, and fermented foods allows us the opportunity to have rich diversity of species and a robust immune system. And the careful use of antibiotics, antimicrobial products, and a diet that supports our microbiome allows these tiny partners to maintain our health in ways that we cannot yet fully understand. Much of the food we eat has changed in ways similar to that of bread. Knowing that the impact of such changes may go beyond our human cells to affect our microbial cells could be the difference in health and disease.